I'm going to show you some other loops that I prefer when it comes to looping through arrays. But I don't want you to think that while loops are unimportant. Let's create a simple ping-pong game to demonstrate another use case for while loops. Let's create a new file named pingpong.php. We add our PHP tags, and then we're ready to start programming the game. We'll start with 2 players, each with an initial score of 0. Player 1 equals 0, and player 2 equals 0. I also want to track how many rounds each game takes, so I'm going to add another variable, round equals 0. Now let's add some comments. To win, a player must reach the score of 11, while also being a minimum of 2 points higher than their opponent. So while those conditions are not met, I'm going to randomly increment one of the players' scores each round. To check for the difference between the players' scores, I can subtract one score from the other. This will give me a number that can be positive or negative depending on which score is higher. We can then find the absolute value of that number. Let me demonstrate. Let's change player 2 equal to 5. Then we'll do a var dump. Player 1 minus player 2. Then we'll also var dump player 2 minus player 1. Let's run the script. I see that the first var dump shows -5 and the second var dump shows 5. The difference between these numbers is 5. All I care about is that the difference between these numbers is greater than 2. I don't care which is the higher number, so I can use a function to determine the absolute value, ABS. I'll add this to the first var dump. Now when I run my script, you can see that the absolute value gives me the number itself without the negation before it. I can use this absolute value in my while loop. Let's comment out these var dumps. So, I want to continue to loop while the absolute value is less than 2. I also want to continue to loop while both scores are less than 11. So I'm going to add a second expression. I'll combine these with the double pipe operator because I want either or to be true. Player 1 is less than 11, and player 2 is less than 11. I need to put parentheses around these two expressions so that they evaluate as a single conditional. Player 1 must be less than 11, and player 2 must be less than 11 to continue my loop. So if the difference between the players is less than 2, we'll continue to loop. Or if player 1 and player 2 are both less than 11, we will continue to loop. The first thing I want to do is to start incrementing the round. This would be round 1, so adding 1 to 0 equals 1. Let's also let the user know what's going on with each loop. So we'll start with a heading for the round. I want to view this in the browser, so let's add the HTML tags. Round, round, and close my tags. Notice that I used the double quotes so that my variable is expanded. Now we want to randomly add a point to either player 1 or player 2. PHP has a function named rand that will generate a random integer. We can specify a minimum and a maximum for this random integer. So we can say, if rand 0 or 1, Then we're going to do something. The min and max are inclusive, meaning it will include the minimum and the maximum in its random number generation. With a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1, we will randomly receive either 0 or 1. Since 0 evaluates to false and 1 evaluates to true, we can use this in our conditional. If 1 is returned and our expression is true, we can add 1 to player 1. Else, we can add 1 to player 2. Now let's display the current score for this round. Player 1 equals player 1 score and a line break. Player 2 equals player 2 score and a line break. And that's all we need for our while loop. So let's preview this script in a browser. We can see each round with a point being awarded to a random player, and the final score ending with player 1 equal 2 and player 2 having 11. This is okay, but let's add a final summary. After our while loop, we should add our comment back up in the while loop. Then after our comment, we can add echo, header 1, if player 1 is greater than player 2, we'll echo player 1. Else, we'll echo player 2. And finally, we'll echo is the winner after rounds, and close our header. Let's preview our script again to see the final result. Player 2 is the winner after 9 rounds.